My name is Joseph Hecht. I'm the owner of the PSR building here on Elmwood. It's a great building. It's a great part of history. I love the building. I never had any complaints why I bought the building. I'm still very fond of the building. But we were out there searching for the right type of a theme that may make sense even in today's economy and today's climate, with so many other areas of business that have been completely devastated, especially the real estate market, which we all know what we've gone through. We've all been humbled, Joseph Hecht included, with all the downturns. We were heavily invested in Florida and Jersey and in New York, and areas that were the big, runner-ups when the market was flying. But on the way down, they were the biggest crashers as well. So we've all been humbled, and as such, we sat back and looked for the right theme that would make the most sense in today's climate. About a year ago, I was introduced to Garrett and his team, the Buffalo Film Group, which at that time comprised of Garrett, who was what I called my starving actor, and we had Terry Fisher, who was, in my opinion, my intellectual advisor, and probably the guy who has the most gray hairs that I've met in Buffalo, up till now at least, in this industry. And then there was Joel, who was the typical guy that actually came to Buffalo, studied in Buffalo, graduated in Buffalo, and because there was no work in Buffalo, actually moved to New York and lived in Brooklyn, around the corner from me, basically, for 25 years, because there was no industry for him to use his trades out here in Buffalo. And they approached me and they said, listen, we've spent a couple of years doing the research on what's missing in Buffalo in order to introduce and to bring the film industry out to Buffalo. And as we all know, the film industry is the fastest growing industry probably in the world in the last 10 years for sure, mainly since digital media became such a great hobby and such an important tool that everybody's got some kind of digital media sitting in their pocket. And they felt that if we were able to somehow create the infrastructure in Buffalo needed for the film industry to actually come out to Buffalo and start utilizing all the different assets that Buffalo naturally represents and naturally has, the architecture, the Niagara Falls, the openness of the community to embrace filming on their streets. I mean, you've never seen anything like it. They'll close down streets. They'll give you airports. They'll give you bridges to jump off of. They'll give you silos to fly over. Everything for the cost of whatever your insurance will cover you, without having to go and spend the tens of thousands of dollars to get these things done in any other kind of a city. I mean, the film commission has been great. And these guys are out there to literally take the next step and to accommodate everybody that it would even show interest in coming out here to Buffalo to do some of the filming. And we have it all. We have the architecture. We have the cobblestone streets. We have the different districts that represent all the way back to the early 1800s. If you wanted to do a timepiece anywhere from the 1800s and to present date, you can do it here in Buffalo, right off our streets. And we can have those streets closed down in no time. We can get the township, the police department, everybody on board, just out there to accommodate any type of film developer that wants to come out here and do it. If it's a large film, a small film, it doesn't make really much of a difference. It's all there. You want to do fields, you want to do valleys, you want to do, you name it. You want to do the Wild West, you can still do it in Buffalo. You don't have to go to Texas. So at the end of the day, you have a tremendous asset line of natural assets sitting all around you, and nobody's taking advantage of it the way they should. Yeah, they're going to Brooklyn, and they're going to California, and they're going to areas that have been built up, and the infrastructure's there because it's convenient. You don't need to have, you have everything at your fingertips. If Buffalo were to create that infrastructure, if Buffalo were to create that, all the different components of what that infrastructure represents, and put it in a very user-friendly environment, we believe that the infrastructure will attract the business, and the business will be forthcoming to Buffalo. And our objective is to actually create the next successful business corridor in Buffalo. Buffalo still needs jobs for the people that may not end up being your next doctor or heart surgeon or the anesthesiologist. Buffalo still needs jobs and opportunities for people that may not end up being the dean of Buff State or the curricular writer for UB. Buffalo needs to have a corridor that can attract all types of people. All types of people, meaning people that at the end of the day may or may not be the people that you're looking on your radar screen. You know, when I met Garrett the first time, and he tried to explain me the beauty about what film is all about, and my background, for those who know me, I'm not that much familiar in film. I did have a hobby as a child with photography. I did like to take pictures and stuff like that, and I maybe understand that. But film has never been really anything that I've ever attached myself to. But there were things that he said to me then that still stand out in my head today. And I guess that's what helped create this passion of taking this historical building, this amazing piece of architect, this amazing piece of history of Buffalo. You walk down the street in Buffalo, you ask somebody, how do we get to the Pierce Arrow building? They know what the Pierce Arrow building is. It's like, where's the Empire State Building in Manhattan? You know, it's a piece of history. People that grew up here, they've, you know, the bicentennial year of 2007, they used to actually have parades around my building every weekend. People would come with their old Pierce Arrow cars, and there are Pierce Arrow groups and Pierce Arrow museums and Pierce Arrow. They go on the internet, just Google Pierce Arrow and see what comes up. Thousands of different pictures in my Pierce. You know, at the end of the day, it's a huge part of history. It's a huge part of what Buffalo represents. And when taking this huge piece of history and now transforming it into what we're going to be calling the Pierce Arrow Digital Art and Film Center or Pierce Arrow Film Center, whatever name at the end of the day ends up on the building, really doesn't make a difference. But it's going to continue a legacy that's been there for the last over 100 years. But what stood out in my mind in the conversations, in the preliminary conversations that we had when they so-called, you know, did their pitch on me, was he showed me a film that he shot in east part of Buffalo, in a pretty rough part of town. You know, maybe similar to a part of town that I grew up in, where walking around, dressed the way I do, I was open game for every gangbanger on the street to just take a poke at me. And for the grace of God, we made it through it, you know. Luckily, there were no guns those days. If not, I'd probably been dead a long time ago, and I wouldn't be telling you my story. When I first got to know Garrett, and one of the things that really stands out in my mind, that really, really impressed me in the theme that we're trying to entertain as we speak, is this film that he's been working on for about a year. And, you know, he does it in bits and pieces because of the fact that it's a, you know, he doesn't have the budget for it. But what stood out in my mind was he took a kid that grew up on the east side of Buffalo in a really tough neighborhood, and he was showing me different clips on how, you know, all of the challenges that these kids had to grow up with, and drugs and everything else going on the streets, and all the crime and different things. You know, really, it at the end of the day, it was something that really touched my soul, because I grew up in these type of neighborhoods where, you know, Brooklyn, where I grew up, wasn't the way it is today. My kids think I fantasize when I talk about it, but all the people that grew up with me in those neighborhoods will verify what we grew up as. And it really touched my soul when he said to me, you know, I took 2 gangbangers and I handed them toy guns to actually act in my movie. And he didn't even understand what he said to me when he said that to me. And I turned to him, I said to him, you did what? You thought it was cool? You took 2 gangbangers off the street and you had them act in your movie with toy guns? To them it was a joke, right? I said, you know what you really did? You handed them a tool to show them life doesn't have to be the way it is on the street. Life doesn't have to be running around with real guns and living your life in that type of environment. You can act. You can do other things. Look how beautiful this movie's turning out using these type of kids on the street. You take one kid off the street, you've saved a whole life. You've saved a whole world. The kids relate to digital film and media. Kids relate to this industry. This is an industry that's far greater and, you know, far broader than any of us ever imagined. You know, I was looking at some of the stats on YouTube, and I don't remember the numbers because there's so many zeros. But if the numbers recall, there could be 80 million clips on YouTube or 80 million clips a day. I mean, the numbers were crazy. I couldn't understand how to even read their stats. The point is that there are so many people out there, in one way or the other, that are connected to the digital film and media scene, that we can't even get our scopes on it. It's an plus billion-dollar industry globally. The global aspect of what the digital film industry represents today, from where it's come from, I mean, is humongous. But the economical aspect and the personal aspect to what we can accomplish with this theme, I believe, far reaches any of those expectations. When you try to build a business, everything you do to build that business is focused on one thing. How much money am I going to make, and how fast can I make it? Buffalo is not a city to come to with that type of attitude. Buffalo has a tremendous amount of, if you want to call it stability. There's nothing flying up, there's nothing flying down. Maybe that's something that attracted me to Buffalo as well. But that idea of how fast can I make it is not really what you come to Buffalo for. I believe that the vision that we have now will serve not just Joseph Hecht and the Pierce Arrow Administration Building. I believe it'll serve the community as a whole. And as such, we will be creating a new corridor, a new business corridor that will evolve. And it'll take time. It may take 5-10 years. But I believe in 5-10 years from now, if this project goes forward, this will be the catalyst that sets in motion the infrastructure needed to bring an ever-growing, probably everlasting media business industry corridor to Buffalo as a whole. And as such, what we will have accomplished is not just self-serving for myself and Garrett and my team that's working so diligently, literally sometimes 24 hours a day to get to the right people and to get the right angle on the camera, if you want to call it, or to shoot Buffalo on the right image, that people should really get the idea of where we're trying to go with this. I believe that this will actually be the launching pad of what Buffalo needs to create this new corridor that will attract and retain the youth that's here already studying in our universities and on all these major campuses and media studies that they actually already have out here. I believe it'll have youth retention in taking kids off the street, getting them involved in an aspect or a business or a field that really talks to their souls. And I believe that it'll be not just a self-serving project, it'll be a project that everybody, the whole community, the community as a whole will benefit from. And that'll include the educational community. We believe that part of our model to do the combination of training, intense training, utilizing the assets that we are going to create in this building, that intense training will be a program that will be embraced by all the different universities and media studies departments that there are out here in Buffalo. Hopefully we'll be able to partner up with some of them, many of them, maybe all of them, or maybe just one of them. But I think at the end of the day, whoever embraces this project with us will be assisting not just their own egos or their own expectations of where they think things should be going. I believe they will be embracing a project that will enhance the lives of thousands of Buffalonians that today don't have this opportunity to them. Everything we do today, especially in today's economy, we need to keep in mind that the creation of jobs, the ability to get people or kids off the streets and give them something to look forward to, giving them a future, is really what we all represent over here. I have children, I have grandchildren today, and it's nothing more important to me than my family, nothing more important to me than my children and how they're going to grow up and what's the streets going to look like when their kids are growing up, and what are the streets going to look like when their kids are growing up. If you don't have something to look forward to, then you just lose all hope and sight of everything's around you. Media, video, digital imaging, all the different aspects of what arts represents and has always represented throughout the years. You go back 2,000 years ago, start studying all the different artifacts, you see what it represented throughout the years. There's a certain amount of hope that comes along with what the whole industry represents as a whole. Not just as a growing industry to make a living, but it has a certain, what I call the La La Land effect, where it gives you that, there is a brighter tomorrow, there is a brighter future. And we believe utilizing the Pierce Arrow building, the history of the Pierce Arrow building, the architecture of the Pierce Arrow building, the dream of what the Pierce Arrow automobile meant in the early 1900s to the United States of America and the world around it, that dream will live on through bringing this car to Buffalo. Many of you have never been in the Pierce Arrow building. Many of you don't even know what a Pierce Arrow automobile is. Hopefully after you see this documentary, you may want to Google it and actually look into it. But this building was created it was built in 1907. It was one of the last buildings of the Pan American exhibition, which was built in the turn of the century. It was the actual administration building of the complete complex over here. Behind us, you have where they actually manufactured the most, which people till today rate probably as the best automobile ever built in the United States of America, which was the Pierce Arrow automobile. Mr. Pierce himself actually was a bicycle manufacturer prior to getting into the automobile business. And the building that we're sitting in right now, where this film is taking place, was the administration building that he grew his enterprise into. It was, until the Deep Depression, it was the most booming, sought-after automobile probably in the world. It was the dignitaries' cars. It wasn't just the layman who, dreamt about. I mean, it wasn't the type of car that everybody drove down the street with. Matter of fact, it still isn't. And the building has some of the most amazing space in it to accomplish what we're really looking to accomplish. We have this amazing, what I call the auditorium area. This, I don't know, maybe in the film business you may want to call it this great amphitheater, or I'm sure you can find other different words to use to describe it. To me, it's this most amazing, unique piece of space. Actually, I probably bought the building once I looked at that space. To me, that was the upside of what this building represented. You have these amazing arches that span the whole width of the building. And their center point, they're probably 32, 35 feet high. Just the thought of building something like this massive structure, and the structure is a 135,000 square foot structure, so it's not your typical two-family house in Brooklyn. Building something like this back in the early 1900s with these amazing arches, the engineering that went into this at such a let's call it a primitive time, without computers, without all the tools that we have today. I went to school for electrical engineering, so at the end of the day, tools we had today, or even when I went to school, outweighs anything that they could have even dreamt of having those days. To be able to build and to create this type of structure back in the early 1900s, to me is an amazing piece of history. And throughout the years, people would come and be glorified just by looking. I have engineers, they come into the building and they look at these, they marvel at this space. Wow, it's just one big wow to everybody who sees it. These open floor plates that at the end of the day were suspended by these amazing arches. The technology that they had available to them, the tools that they had available were so primitive compared to what we have today. And look what they were able to accomplish. So the building is very, very unique, not just in the sense that it's 100 plus years old, but it's unique in what it represents. It represents stamina. It represents, you build it right, we're here to stay. It represents history. It represents us being able to learn from the past to try to predict what the future is going to be. And our feelings are taking this piece of history and utilizing it in a way that's going to be a role model for what's coming for the next 100 years, bringing new sustainability to kids and youth and industry. Then this industry is massive, because it's not just a couple of starving actors. It's not just a couple of screenwriters. You're talking about electricians, you're talking about carpenters, you're talking about stagehands and cameramen, lighting people, you're talking about makeup artists, hairstylists, you name it. This industry talks to them. You got to have someone to make those costumes. You have to have someone to design the costumes and then to sew the costumes. This is not just an industry that just touches on, okay, I got a couple of John Waynes in the background. No, that's not what it is. John Wayne wasn't John Wayne if he didn't have everything behind him. This is an industry that's evolving, it's ever growing, and it speaks to our youth. It gives them hope. When they watch a movie, it takes them out of whatever mode they were in, and it puts them into what I call La La Land. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Channel in the right direction, teaching them that this can be a future for them, utilizing this to give them something in their hands, some ammunition to go out to the real world, we've accomplished everything. We've accomplished a lot more than just something that's self-sustaining. So me as a businessman, it's very possible that as a student housing complex, at the end of the day, I probably make more bang for my buck. I probably end up not worrying so much about how do you pay the bills at the end of the month. It has a certain stability to it. The fact that there are over 100,000 students running around the Buffalo and my facility can only accommodate maybe 300-400 beds. So at the end of the day, my choice of students would be, far outweigh my risk in developing a project like that. But what have I accomplished? I've accomplished, for Joseph and his family, maybe a good idea, but I've done nothing for Buffalo. Yes, I may restore a historical building so people drive by and say, wow, that's the old Pierce Arrow building, now it's the new student housing complex. But I haven't done anything for Buffalo in itself. Not that my goal when I came to Buffalo was to do something for Buffalo. But now that I have an opportunity, utilizing the team that we put together, and each one of them is unique in their own way, and I've had a first-hand chance over the last year to meet all these kids. I don't know if you know who Garrett is, and I speak very fondly of him, even though I may beat him around a little bit when when he comes late, or stands me up, or doesn't get the work done on time. And again, he's a starving actor, and he's on my payroll. He gets paid 60 minutes an hour. We don't pay a penny more, a penny less. And when you're getting paid 60 minutes an hour, it's pretty hard to pay the bills at the end of the month. So every once in a while, but one of the most fascinating things about Garrett is his ambition to help everybody around him. He's the guy that this story is written about. He's the guy that really attracts me the most to what Buffalo, or what this building can do here in Buffalo, and what this corridor can do for the youth that's out there. I had the privilege of first-handedly experiencing his 48-hour film festival, or whatever they call it. He's the sponsor or the host of the 48-hour film festival out in Buffalo. And through that experience, I actually got to meet probably close to 100 different Garretts. I mean, all of them are out there. This is their passion. They've studied here in Buffalo, and they go out there and they get a line that they have to create a movie within 48 hours. It's very exciting. Actually, the Pierce Arrow building was the host to their final screening, or when they picked the winner of the event. But I got a first-hand chance to talk to these kids, to meet them firsthand, to understand what's going on inside of them. And some of these kids, they have tattoos all over their bodies. They come from a way different background than Joseph Hecht, that's for sure. And if whoever knows me can actually, I think they would actually swear on the Bible to that. But there was one thing that I saw in all of them. They had a passion to do something with their lives. And they needed a place that will give them the ability to do that. And we actually had people sign petitions at these events, just for me to get an idea of how many people really understand what we're trying to accomplish, or what we're trying to accomplish, what that represents to them for their futures. And we probably have close to at least 100 plus petitions, and we could probably get a few hundred more if we really went out there to get them, where every single one of these these artists, if you want to call them, or filmmakers, or whatever part of the industry that they belong to, they've all agreed that what Buffalo is missing is some type of infrastructure to pool all the resources together, to get everything under one roof, to get a place where you can actually do your pre-production and post-production work, where you can have sophisticated equipment and the proper computers and the proper imaging type of stuff. I've seen kids, interns working over here in my office, and they also, just like Garrett, they get paid 60 minutes on the hour, and that's about it. If they want to go for 59 minutes an hour, they got to actually file in triplicate. I mean, everybody's devoting their time, spending their hours and hours of work. And I watch them work on these computers. And we're pretty primitive right now, but we've accomplished a lot with the primitive equipment that we are working with. Creating for them the right screening rooms, and creating for them the right editing rooms, and post-production, pre-production facilities. Getting that soundstage, which will be one of the most unique sound stages in all of New York. Maybe all of the United States, but in New York definitely. This soundstage will span about 18,000 square feet with, probably minimum of the center point, about 32 foot high ceilings. In this most amazing barreled auditorium type environment. You name the film that you want to shoot. You can do Spider-Man just on the roof. I mean, it's incredible what we have over here in this building to be able to create the right infrastructure that's needed for expanding and bringing the industry out to Buffalo. One of the artists that I met was a guy, they called him Milk. I don't remember his whole name. He's a really sweet guy. And he said some things to me that really made sense. And he really has the pulse on it. Comes from a family of artists and very, very, very educated and very professional. And he said to me, Joseph, he says, when you go out to build a business, he says, what you really look for is you look for the horses and then you build the cart. In this case, the only way that you'll ever get the horses out here is you got to create the cart in order for the horses to come. And that stood out in my mind all along. Without infrastructure, without having the proper trained personnel to work on the stages, without having the proper editing rooms and sound stages and all the different parts of the facility that are needed, without having the right people that can do your makeup and to create your every little scene, and without having the talents of guys like Joel and Garrett and Terry Fishers and people out there that can actually come onto a stage and take charge of a stage and to actually roll with whatever's needed, why would a real serious production come out to Buffalo? Why? They would come for everything else but. They would come for the architecture. They would come for the building. They would come for the scenery shots, the Niagara Falls, the bridges, the streets, the cobblestone streets, the old architecture. They would come for all these different reasons. They don't come because they're missing the infrastructure. They're missing the trained personnel. They're missing the ability to do their pre-production and post-production work. They're missing the right trained, the professionals that will work on those sets, that will manage those sets, that will understand what it means. Bring me over an apple, or what a flag really means when you're talking about a sound stage. People that will understand how to move with the camera and how to deal with the camera. People that understand how to use the lighting equipment. Electricians that know how to hook it up. Carpenters that know how to build the sets. Plumbers. Whatever part of this industry they would get in a place like Brooklyn or California or any other already established area, that's what they would expect in place prior to them coming out here. So we have a situation where is the egg that came first or the chicken? We need to create the chicken before the eggs will come. And as such, we're in a situation where we're trying to create an infrastructure that will be self-sustaining, not just on looking for that Batman movie to come to Buffalo, not just looking for that next 24-hour TV series that will keep the place busy for a few years as they build that TV series. We need sustainability from local business. We need sustainability from what we can donder up right here in Buffalo. There are plenty of starving small filmmakers out here in Buffalo, which I've met over the last year, that a building like this not just enhances what they're trying to accomplish, not just gives them the tools they need in their hands, readily available to them to accomplish what has to get accomplished. It opens the door for to the world to first of all utilize their expertise, utilize all that they can bring to the table, and eventually, once the world learns about what Buffalo really has to offer, then yes, the 48-hour movies will come, the 24-hour series will come, and the Batman movies, they will come because it'll be a natural place for them to come to. You have to keep in mind, whatever they're filming anywhere else in Buffalo is cheaper to get done. The permitting is almost nothing. The parking is not a problem. The police department is geared, ready, willing, and able to help them. The film commissioners are amazingly active. They actually come to the sets and they spend time on every single set when, whatever comes to town, they make sure everything is available to them. The hotel industry, the airports. You don't have any of the problems that you have when you go to Brooklyn or you go to California or any of these other places. And the costs are far cheaper. If it costs you $150 a night in a sleazy place in Manhattan, it may cost you here $40 a night in a decent place. You can get everything you need within walking distance of our building. You have all the different supermarkets, food, lodging, whatever you need is here. It's right at your fingertips, and a lot cheaper than what you'll do in any of these other cities. As the price of developing films has been coming down over the years because of digital media, the more low-budget films are being put into play. And when you look at a low-budget film, every penny counts. Now, added on top of all that are tax incentives that the governor has put in play. And we're still hoping that one day those tax incentives in Western New York will be elevated to attract more business out here. But as they stand right now, 30% tax incentive, that's pretty cool. And now the new post-production tax incentive of 35% upstate New York, that makes post-production very, very affordable and economically feasible to be done out here. Why do it in India when you can do it in Buffalo? Why give the work offshore when we need jobs here? You know, we have a President Obama and we have all these candidates that run for elections and all they talk about is how they want to create jobs. This corridor for Western New York will be probably the single most outperforming business corridor probably in any other county or other than other areas where they've done the same. Look what it's done to Pittsburgh, what it's done to Detroit, what it's done to Toronto, what it's done to other smaller cities that geographically are similar to us. We're not trying to take away business from Brooklyn. We probably never would be able to. The infrastructure there is massive. They're spending now another $400 million to expand Steiner Studios. And the government is kicking in a big chunk of that. You know, at the end of the day, we're not trying to compete with Brooklyn. We're trying to get our foot in the doorway of this ever-growing, probably everlasting industry that will be the next huge corridor for Buffalo. You talk about the governor who wrote a check for $4 million to a company that's going to hire maybe 50, 60 people in the next several years. This can create thousands of jobs in the next 5, 10 years. And you know, whoever embraces this project, whoever stands with us and helps us get to where we have to go, they will be able to look back and say, you know, that little project had my endorsement. If it's the mayor, if it's the governor, if it's the Economical Development Corporations, if it's the ECIDA, if it's Buff State, if it's University of Buffalo, if it's Damien College, it don't make a difference which one it is. At the end of the day, whoever joins on board and whoever helps us get this vision out, helps us create the cart before the horses come, will be able to sit back and watch how this evolves. The more we meet with people, we see the needs that are needed out there. We try to figure out ways how we're going to be able to accommodate that in this area, in this building. The building itself is 135,000 plus minus square feet. It's just big enough to get the infrastructure started for an industry, you know, to be a center for the catalyst of this infrastructure. We have our idea is to create maybe 42 work-live units, where if, let's say, a university like Buff State or UB would want to bring a program, one of their media programs into the building, they would actually have a place where they can have their classrooms, they have a place where they can do their training, they have a New York State certified soundstage where they'll be able to actually practice and do hands-on experience with their kids. And if they have an issue like Buff State has with housing, they can actually house them in the same building. Or we can have the other spaces that we're looking to rent out as commercial space that would have in the same theme of things. They could be live units. We're trying to accommodate whatever we can to make this building sustainable without having to dream about the next blockbuster, $100, $200, $300 million producing film coming to Buffalo. If we can keep it sustainable with locally what's needed and get the right training and get the right people that are certified through the unions, and the unions are embracing us tremendously. They're standing on hold. They're ready to come do training in the building. They're ready to do whatever it takes. They're going to lobby for us. Their commitment has been overwhelming because the more certified people we have, the more professionals that are out here, the more vibrant this business corridor will become. It's not going to happen overnight. This is not a dream that we say, okay, in 4 years from now I have the economy turned over. No, but I can tell you one thing. From where we are today, 4 years from when this building goes into operations using this theme, 4 years later there will be hundreds, maybe even thousands of new jobs, opportunities for our youth and for the kids that are graduating Buffalo. The end result will outweigh any efforts or pain that we've gone through to get it all started. I looked at a project, and again, my job is not to second guess projects, but just to give you an idea of what goes on in my mind. They did a project downtown called Art Space. It's an amazing project. They actually got 60 live-work units in the building and some commercial space, and they actually spent about, at least according to that PDF file, $17.5 million. I was told by architects that they actually went into a cost overrun, and by the time they were done, it was over $20 million. When I look at that project, I say to myself, what have we accomplished with that project? Yeah, very nice. We took a building, we rehabbed it, spent a fortune of money. I mean, I personally would have taken those 60 families that are living there and probably bought them 60 houses in Amherst or Williamsville someplace with a big ranch or something and spent a lot less money. But what have we accomplished at the end of the day? We have an art space, we have a building. There was a lot of lobbyists, Mrs. Clinton was involved, you had the Belmont shelters were involved. It's great, it's wonderful, beautiful. It was a great project. But what have we accomplished for Buffalo with that project? $16 million in a project like this will open a corridor that will create hundreds of jobs, thousands of jobs. It will create opportunities of getting our kids off the streets. It'll give those, what I call, Garrett doesn't like when I use these words, get those gangbangers the opportunity to participate in society in a way that they never dreamt of, giving them something that they can enjoy doing, not just thinking that there's no way out of East Buffalo, not just taking neighborhoods and just thinking about, or I had a meeting once with the deputy mayors out here in Buffalo. We spoke about back then when there was still money in the banks, we were ready to do things. We spoke about rehabbing some of those areas, and it was just fantasy land. Till today, the same blocks that we spoke about are still being talked about. Nothing's happened, nothing's changing. This can change the face of those any neighborhood in Buffalo. This can embrace those abandoned buildings. This can embrace the industry as a whole. The complex on Elmwood is a huge complex. This building is just a small little piece of it. As this evolves, it's very possible it'll expand into the buildings behind us. And before you turn around, this can become a 30, 40 acre complex, similar in theme to, maybe to some of the bigger complexes that you have in other areas, like in Brooklyn or in California or in Detroit or any of these other places. The ability for this to be ever evolving is amazing, and the industry is heading in that direction. It's the only industry in the last 5 years that has been growing at a steady pace. It's according to New York State websites, it was responsible for $4.2 billion worth of salaries last year alone in New York. How much of that did Buffalo get? How many kids can we point at and say, wow, all these guys working here in Buffalo got a piece of that? Nothing. As a matter of fact, Milk, 2 weeks is in Brooklyn or New York, and 4 days he's in Buffalo with his family. 2 weeks he's there, 4 days here. I mean, is that a life to raise a family? I mean, I'm on the road a lot, and trust me, it's very hard on my kids. But when they were younger, I tried to be home as much as I could. If I had to be 2 weeks away and 4 weeks home with them, I don't know how they would have turned out. It's not fair for us to overlook this opportunity. It's been overlooked for too long. When I met with Garrett and I met with his team, and they, over a few months of time, and gave me the opportunity to take a long, hard look at what's really the backbone of all this. The backbone is our kids. The backbone is our streets. The backbone is kids that, maybe some of us don't want to think about. But at the end of the day, every kid has some type of digital media in his pocket. Show me a kid today that doesn't walk around with a BlackBerry or an iPhone or an iPad or some type of digital media. This is a passion. It's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. Utilizing the tools that are out there, utilizing the things that they want to be involved with. We spoke about this kid the other day that's been homeschooled. And he's a homeschooled kid. For whatever reason is, their parents felt that they felt safer training him at home than sending him into the public school systems. And at the end of the day, his passion is just film. And he's a whiz, a young kid. What this guy can do with a computer, what he can do with digital imaging is amazing. They have a natural knack towards what we're bringing them. So why not assist them in getting to where they have to go? By building this corridor in Buffalo, we will be opening up the doors, not just to an economical impact which nobody even dreamt of. And based on the Governor Cuomo's statements, and based on other cities which we've done a lot of research into, the impact as this type of industry was brought into the area was overwhelming, far greater than any other corridor that we can imagine. It'll do more for the economy than anything else that's on the plate right now. We have a group, we have what I call the Buffalo Billionaire Group, Howard Zensky and all the different players that are involved in making decisions on how the governor's commitment of $1 billion gets spent in Western New York. We need them to take a long, hard look at what we're trying to accomplish. We need them to understand that whatever projects there are on the table, the amount of money that would be needed to invest in what we're doing, the return is far greater than what they're going to get by any of these other type of projects out there. True, it may not be anybody's pet project right now because it's ever evolving. But if they take a long, hard look at what we're bringing to the table, they should be embracing us, not just shunning us and trying to hide from meetings with us. We need to get our story out to the right people, the people that will understand the vision and understand where we can go with this vision. I believe Governor Cuomo is the man that has that vision. I've read his letters. I've read how he's embraced the new tax credits. I believe that his $1 billion that he's allocated to Western New York, a portion of that should go to a project of this size. It's not an overwhelming project. We're not talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. I believe we can get this done decently. It's a project that we budgeted out between 16 and 18 million dollars to rehab the building, to actually get all the production facilities in place, create the stages, put in all the different mechanicals, if you like to call it, that are missing currently in the building, to accommodate film crews, to accommodate set production and everything else. If it means putting in new elevator shafts, and we've done a lot of detail in our plan. We've priced it out. There's no money out here that's going into garbage pails. We're not going to spend $17.5 million to create 60 apartments. Do the math. That's almost $300,000 an apartment. To me, it sounds a little cuckoo when you're in Buffalo and you can buy them a house here in Riverside for $50,000. Two family, they can actually have an income from one floor and live on the other floor. So I'm not getting into the economics because the economics don't make any sense with most of the projects that I've reviewed over here. But the end result will outweigh anything else that's been out there. We just had this major rehab of the Lafayette Hotel. I actually had a tour the other day of it. It's amazing. $42 million rehab. We're not looking at $42 million. We're looking at a $16 to $18 million rehab that will create a business corridor that will not be anything less than the next growing industry for Western New York, and particularly for Buffalo.